can we dive deeper into your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Nicole, Commercial Director at Stewart. I actually started with Stewart from the very beginning when we launched the UK market in 2015. So I've seen Stewart really go through all different stages, from starting the launch to growth to scaling and all through to the acquisition, which was about this time last year by Geopost, for those of you who don't know it. Geopost also owns DPD, so it's a big French logistics conglomerate, and obviously that has changed the way that Stewart is perceived and is driving expansion throughout different cities in the world, which we'll go over later.
Excellent. Thanks very much. For those of you new to me, I'm Alvar, marketing manager at Paazl. I think we'll touch more on Stewart in this webinar, less on Paazl, but for those of you unfamiliar with Paazl, we are a logistics platform connecting online retailers to a wide variety of mainly parcel carriers. So whether that's local companies like Stewart, but also the guys like DPD or international companies, UPS, DHL, FedEx, domestic players such as PostNL, Bpost. So we basically connect e-commerce to carriers, allowing our clients to better ship worldwide and better serve their customers. Well, as I said, special guest is Stuart. For those of you unfamiliar with Stewart, Nicole, can you tell us a little bit about your company? How did it originate, and what's your unique selling point?
Yeah, 100%. Maybe if we go to the next slide, I can walk through the actual
yeah, there we go.
The journey. Yeah, so we were born in 2015 thanks to a strategic investment by Geopost. Geopost already saw the Stewart of future not being linked to food, but actually being able to use a fast and nimble last mile logistics platform to essentially change and innovate the way that things move from A to B within big cities. So thanks to that investment, we spent 2 years really optimizing our technology to be able to power the logistics behind the scenes that would then be sold, to retailers to essentially have a different delivery option at checkout, which is the so-called same day or on demand. So we had a lot of traction all throughout our key 3 cities that we launched in, which were London, Paris, and Barcelona. And thanks to that expansion and traction we got through different verticals, which weren't just food, which were anywhere from retailers that are focused on fashion to tech and e-com to pure play e-com players and so on. Geopost decided to fully acquire us. And the reason for that is that they saw Stewart as the missing link within the sister group of portfolio companies to be able to do those fast last mile deliveries within cities. So this really fits in within, the notion of sustainability, because every big metropolitan city has to look at new ways of being able to do deliveries. And this is important because we're getting so e-com is growing, right? So our purchases from online are growing, which means that these purchases are being fulfilled from a DC, which is not in an urban area. So just to get that item from 3 hours to even 10 hours, or even in some cases from different countries to London, is very expensive and costly and also damaging our environment. So the reason why they see Stewart as a missing piece is because we can simply do that last mile in a green way, an efficient way. We still do loops, but we're not talking about loops of 1,000 parcels in a day within central London with a van, but actually smaller loops of 8 drops per job within central hubs within London.
Excellent. Thank you, Martin.
So yeah, this is just to give you an overview of obviously, going from 3 cities to 21 and 30 by end of the year. So this is obviously very client driven, and what's really important to note about Stewart is that we do not do deliveries from a city to another city, but it's intra-city deliveries. So that obviously changes the way that our operations work, right? And that's what helps us build a sustainable business model for logistics and innovating this last mile space.
Excellent. And just for those breakdown of your clients, how would you describe the mix between food and non-food? How is the distribution?
Yeah. So, our goal is to obviously move away as much as possible from food. I'm not saying that we would stop ever doing food, because the goal of our business model is to smoothen out the peaks. And the way we do that is by working across every vertical. So we are completely product agnostic, meaning that we can drive operational efficiency by working with food that has, your lunch and dinner and breakfast peaks, to grocery, which has the peak later in the afternoon, to fashion, retail deliveries that have their peak in the evening, which is great because it allows us to really have a smooth demand curve, and allows us also to build a business model that, although we're in, an agency model with the drivers whereby they're self-employed, these drivers are making a lot of money per hour because they're just constantly busy throughout the day, which is different than a model where you're only doing food, like your Deliveroo's or Uber Eats of these worlds, where it's super peaky, right? So you're focusing all your orders and jobs in those 2 hours, like 1.5 at lunch, 1.5 in the evening, and that's not great for drivers that are trying to feed their families as a job, essentially.
Yeah, so you can supply full-time jobs, whereas the food only might be a part-time job, a student
Exactly.
job, and you are more like
Yeah.
a okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent.
Exactly.
Okay,
And
thanks.
so what you can see here is, you have the likes of Nespresso. So Nespresso is, a big brand that started doing fast and green deliveries with Stewart. And the reason for this is that their reasoning behind it is they already want to be able to, the capsules they sell, they want to make them more sustainable. They want to be able to, recycle them, but also being able to receive these capsules in a green way is very important to them as a brand. So they wanted to launch a fast and green service, and by fast I mean you can order your capsules online and receive them within 2 hours in London. So that's, pretty much as fast as you can get from in-store fulfillment.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks. It's a very new space opening up for a lot of retailers and allows to different business models and get creative with their delivery. We'll touch, of course, touch deeper on your company later in the conversation. I think just after this brief introduction, it's good to give a breakdown of the content of today's webinar. First off, we're going to look at the general difference between online and offline buying. Which of the two is greener? Can we make that distinction? And next up, we're basically going to look at how can we make e-commerce even greener. And we made a breakdown of 4 key um, areas you can influence as an online retailer, as a carrier, as a consumer to make e-commerce even greener than it is today. And I think that leaves us plenty of stuff to talk about. So we'll just wrap up with some takeaways, and I think then we have a solid 30-minute conversation going. Let's start with the important question: online versus offline. Which is greener? It's a bit of a how do you say? A question to get our minds started. What's your take on this, Nicole? Do you have a first gut feeling of which of the two would be a greener way to shop?
I mean, definitely in big metropolitan cities, offline is definitely greener, and that's just because of the way that the e-com infrastructure is set up. As I mentioned before, unfortunately, we don't live in a world where the DCs, whereby you're ordering online, are sitting within city centers, but they're sitting outside of city centers because the space that's needed is immense, right?
Mm.
So obviously, if I'm ordering online, unfortunately, retailers are not at the stage yet. They're working on it. I mean, the majority are working on in-store fulfillment, but that requires a lot of infrastructure change. We're talking about legacy systems that have been in place for years, whereby whatever is ordered online on e-com is treated as a different P&L in the business. So there's never been that idea of merging, obviously, your store inventory and being able to fulfill from that store, although it's maybe just a kilometer away from the end customer. So they're realizing now that they need to be able to do this, not just to be greener, but obviously greener is the most important thing here, but also to be able to compete with Amazon, right? Because Amazon is able to provide that service. So if you're not, then you're just going to be left behind. And we've seen that with a lot of, retailers recently going into administration that you wouldn't have expected, right? So
Yeah,
it's important.
I agree. Definitely, it's a green thing, but also a customer convenience thing. There's more sides to the story, in-store fulfillment. If you look at research on the important question, or the basic question, online versus offline, which is greener, we came across this study by MIT. It's a few years old, but I think the whole concept of the study still stands up today. And what they basically said is, they made a breakdown of all different kinds of shoppers you have today. So there's the traditional shoppers who do everything in store. Then there's what they call cybernauts, basically people who buy everything online and have all the fulfillment done to their house, so they don't see a store anymore. And then of course there's a lot of mixed shopping behavior. So you either go to the store and buy online, or you research online and go to the store to buy things. So it's very hard to make a distinction between pure online and pure offline. There is basically, yeah, in practice there's no not only those two types of shoppers. So if we look at the CO2 impact of the different shopper types, we can see that traditional shoppers are among the most polluting of them all, and then the pure online guys are at the very bottom. So in theory, if all goes well, if e-commerce fully delivers, the guys who shop purely online will be greener than those who shop purely offline. And it's of course MIT, it's an American study, so a lot of this was put on the fact that the traditional shopper would take the car to the store to research and to buy their items, and also take the car back if they wanted to return. So basically, 40 purchases would mean 40 cars driving back and forth, whereas somebody who would buy online, those 40 online purchases would just go in one van, and so it's one van driving instead of 40 cars on the road. So that's the concept behind this study, claiming that basically online shopping has less than half the impact of traditional offline shopping. But as we said, in reality, it's the shopping landscape is way more like this. So different shopping under different circumstances. There's no real online versus offline only.
Yeah. And also, I mean, this also takes into account the different infrastructure of cities, right? If you take London, for example, the traditional shopper, a normal person in London is not going to own a car and is not going to drive into central London with a car to do their shopping at Zara. They're going to take, TfL or maybe their bikes to do that. So it really depends on the landscape. Obviously, London and big metropolitan areas are not all of the UK and are not, all of the different countries' shopping habits. But still, there's a clear difference, I think, between a metropolitan way of shopping and what falls within the rest of the country.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a very, how do you say, complex landscape. So it's a complex question with a complex answer. A lot of factors driving the eventual impact. Basically, in media, shopping gets a lot of blame for being a polluting way of business. It's not entirely true, but I think still there's a lot to be won for e-commerce to become even greener. So in theory, it's already the greenest way of shopping, but that's if all goes according to plan. And we see in reality that, mistakes happen. things go wrong, and that when things go wrong, the impact of online shopping goes way up. So what we've distinguished are, I think, four key changes that need to happen if we want e-commerce to become as green as it can be, as it could be. Of course, there's more sides to this, but I think these are the four key drivers. Preventing missed deliveries, reducing the amount of returns, reducing the amount of air in the parcels, and finally, if those parcels are on the road, make sure that they are delivered by a green vehicle and not by some diesel engine running through the streets of Amsterdam or London. Do you think we've covered the key factors here, Nicole?
Yeah, I think these are very these are key, and this is actually something that you can see is being tackled, by companies like Stewart. So if I take these four and I think about how these apply to our business model, I mean, the fact that we are same day and on demand allows us to really reduce and prevent missed deliveries, because the idea here is that the end customer will be notified and knows exactly when when we're coming, right, to do the delivery, because they chose that specific hour and they're in charge of selecting that. Meanwhile, in a traditional logistics and carrier model, the customer is not in control. They're not choosing that time. So missed deliveries are higher, right? Definitely. So that's the first point. Then the second point, in terms of returns, there's a lot of things we're doing around this, and one of it is, we've seen that a lot of shoppers end up ordering multiple SKUs of the same item of different colors, just to know, okay, is this the color I want, or is this the size that is actually going to fit me? So the idea here is to be able to return it the same moment that we're doing the delivery. So actually the steward can be waiting while you're trying it on and optimize that and bring it back as fast as possible. So not only are you making it greener by doing that, but you're also allowing the end customer to get refunded same day and get the stock back onto the shelves faster for the retailer. That's another thing, that we're working on. And on transportless air, that's another interesting point. So this is a bit a cause to embracing greener vehicles. So when we go to retailers and we say, look guys, we can do this green, obviously it needs to fit into a bike. We need to fit as many parcels on the backpack of a bicycle. And as a result from that, they are changing their packaging because they know they want to be able to fit as many parcels as possible into a backpack, right? Yeah. That drives down the cost for them. There's less vehicles needed, whether it's green or not, and essentially optimizes the operations. So I think these are really four key changes that Stuart is also working on right now, and that offers retailers.
Excellent. Yeah, let's dive deeper into each one of them. We just made a breakdown for the rest of the webinar between these four topics and give some examples and also reflect on the solutions offered by Stuart. Starting with missed deliveries. Basically, what's the problem here? German study. This is also from last webinar. I think the actual numbers may vary between countries, but basically the point is we all want our stuff at home. That's the convenience of e-commerce. But in reality, we are not always there to answer the door. So in this particular German study, they found out that 61% of parcels are delivered first time at the home of the consumer. So in reality, we are not there to answer the door, even though we want it at home. Found some Belgian figures. 8% of parcels on average are misdelivered, but if you go into certain areas, that number can go up to 25% of misdeliveries first time. So that's really key to reduce the amount of pollution, because what happens when you're not there to answer the door? People have to come again. They have to drive again. So basically, doubling the emission needed to deliver your parcel. And it's not just emissions. I found this study in Seattle pointing at failed deliveries, basically saying that the missed deliveries, so the vehicles on the side of the roads, were a major cause of congestion. So I think they said something like that only 13% of buildings in Seattle had a specific place for a vehicle to park their car and make the delivery. And in other cases, they would just park on the curb or park on the streets, causing congestion, traffic jams. So it's not just pollution in a direct sense, but it's also congestion and just an all-around feeling of gridlogging the city. Of course, this is something you tackle with Stuart, because are you doing bike deliveries only? Do you have vans on the road, or is everything bike delivery, something you can park next to the building and just keep traffic flowing?
Yeah, so actually over 60% of our deliveries to date are green and are done on bikes. We don't have vans, we have mopeds and cars. So definitely smaller transport types. A lot of our cars are obviously hybrid already, but there's a lot of work to be done on, innovative transport types, and that's something that we will be looking at with our sister company, DPD, who's already doing a lot of investment in, small vans that are completely electric. So that's obviously the next stage to prevent congestion from happening. But already bikes are quite nimble and fast to get around the city.
Yeah, I agree. And also interesting stat from this study was, I found it interesting that they said that 73% of the delivery time, so the time needed by the courier, was spent inside the buildings trying to find the right person and getting the delivery.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so that's one of our, about a third of the job time, of the delivery time, is waiting time, either at pickup or a drop off. So
Wow.
definitely something that we need to optimize. And the best way to do that is also through accuracy of the addresses, right? So that needs to be done on the retailer side on address verification, and then it ties into the notion of, can we just deliver to the person instead of to a fixed address, which is, the next evolution that's coming.
Yeah, what we discussed very briefly in the beginning, the geolocation stuff. So
Yeah.
just not just to the address, but to the actual person inside the
Exactly.
building on the yeah. That really sounds like the future. Um, yeah, it's kind of evident, but what happens next if the delivery is missed? In most cases, the driver will have to make another delivery attempt, basically, well, doubling emissions, at least in the last mile. So he has to come around again and drive an extra time to deliver the parcel. In some cases, it's delivered to a pickup point, which is not bad if the consumer takes the bike or walks to the pickup point. But I don't know, if they live in a more rural area, that oftentimes means they have to take the car to the pickup point, again causing emissions. And even worse, in some countries, pickup points are scarcer. They will just leave the parcel in the warehouse of the carrier. And I read here that a study that suggests that a 25-mile drive to a warehouse equals 26 delivery attempts, because it's just so inefficient to drive one car all the way to a warehouse for one little parcel.
Yeah.
What's your solution to the? What should you do to reduce the amount of missed deliveries? What should you do if you don't see somebody ringing the door first time?
So as I mentioned earlier, so the real-time live tracking, which we'll get into in a second, but this is exactly what it looks like. So we're not talking about a simple status notification anymore that's saying, hey, your parcel will be with you today. No, this is a real live map showing you exactly where your driver is, very Uber style. So that's obviously changing the way the end customer is perceiving and waiting for the parcel and knows when to expect it, right? So that's number one, to drive it down. So we have about, not even 1% of missed deliveries. Like, it's super low in terms of the, end customer not being home because they're expecting it. As I said earlier, it's about the convenience that they chose. So that's one way. Then the second way is, we also drop it off at a pickup point, which could be one of our sister companies, example of the DPD pickup network. And what we're in talks about is with different companies is to be able to do the redelivery, right? Let's assume they dropped it off at a pickup shop or, a Collect Plus, then we can do that redelivery, great, by bike the next day. So
Oh,
that's
you come pick it up at.
yeah, we could do the pickup and drop off to, it's essentially what we call the second delivery attempt. We could be doing that as Stewart. Bart, can you hear me? Just 1 second, let's wait for Oliver to hop back on. I think he had a connection issue. Can everybody still hear me? Okay, perfect. So just continuing on this, obviously, real-time tracking is very important. But as I said, because we have real-time tracking, we can keep the missed deliveries very low. But what we're working on is with different collection hubs, like your Collect Pluses of this world, or Colissimo in France, to DPD Pickup Shop Network here, is to do the second missed delivery and deliver that home. So that's something that is currently being worked on. So this is obviously an example of what a lot of different companies are working on, to be able to essentially drop your parcel at different areas within cities, right? So it could be, there's a famous dawdle that you might know about, that is smartly positioned themselves at central train stations or access points for underground, whereby you will naturally pass by there on your commute to work, for instance. So that's another way.
Back online, Nicole. Sorry.
Perfect. Perfect.
I think our internet connection just melted because in the sun. Well, thank you. Just continue the conversation. Excellent.
Yeah. So if you want to take it from e-commerce returns per industry, that's fine, Alvar.
All right. Thanks very much. Sorry for the slight interruption. Always the technical difficulties. Yeah. So next up was, of course, missed deliveries first and foremost. But then there's the hidden side of e-commerce. Well, it's not so hidden anymore. I think it's more of a public secret that a lot is coming back to e-commerce. I think averages vary between 7 to 20%, and there's of course notorious cases of companies over 30%. I just read this morning that we in the Netherlands are supposedly the top returning country in the world, or at least in Europe, averaging a 9% return rate across all industries, and mostly half of all parcels being returned include fashion items. So yeah, it's a big, major hidden impact on the sustainability side. Because what happens next if somebody returns an item, it's not so bad if they just return it to a pickup point and the carrier would be at the pickup point regardless and just pick up the extra parcel. Then there's not much more CO2 emissions happening. But I think where things go wrong is the increasing amount of service expected by consumers, whereby the carrier comes to the door and picks up the parcel. If that's not a green guy, not a bike courier picking up the parcel, but a diesel van, that's where things go wrong. So again, we're just doubling emissions. And another major part of it is that it's not only the parcel coming to the house of the consumer and going back, they also order again. So that's, I think, the major cause of why we want returns to be as low as possible. What's your service on the returns end? Do you do pickup at the customer's doorstep?
Yeah, yeah. So we call this service instant returns, whereby we give the end customer a 5-minute collection window for us to come pick up and essentially deliver back to the closest pickup shop. So the fantastic thing is about that the closest pickup shop is within less than 1.5 miles away from an end customer's postcode. So that really reduces the drop instead of, a traditional carrier going and doing these huge collection loops within a big city, right?
Yeah.
So
And also what you said, the instant return thing is also on the horizon for you guys, right? And also
yeah,
so just try it out, come back in I don't know, wait 10 minutes and just take out the items that are not welcome.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think reducing returns is a study in and of itself and it's worthy of a webinar in and of itself. But I think also talking to people in the business, what are they doing to reduce returns? It all comes down to, I think, photos, descriptions, reviews, just so making sure that people buy the stuff, the right size, the right color, the right item, and just, yeah, basically ensuring that they get the right item and not just ordering multiple items, knowing full well they will return half of them. I think that's a large part of it. Anything to add to this? How would you say online retailers can do an effort to reduce returns?
Well, definitely it lies within the descriptions as you mentioned, and it's about making the experience online as personal as possible. So you already have some retailers, especially in fashion, that have specific softwares that allow you to simulate what it would look like if you were wearing it, because every cut is different. Every person is positioned in a different way. Then you have the option as well to walk into a store nowadays and order, although you're seeing it on the storefront. So you're having a walk-in experience like you mentioned earlier, but you're actually ordering online. So you actually get to see the item in store, but you're then ordering online through different tablets they have in store. So that's also what they're trying to push for. So you get accustomed with the brand, you get accustomed with the fit, but ultimately you are still ordering online. And this is something that a lot of e-com pure players are doing.
Excellent. I think it sounds like the future. Now, from what I understand, you're also launching a returns portal soon, or is it already live? Like
Yeah.
allowing people to pick up or define a pickup moment for their return item.
Yeah, it's live on. You can see it live on Zalando's. It's called Retour Illico, and the Zalando is actually at the forefront of this. This is obvious, right? You can think that a company that has the 40% return rate needs to find a way to make returns more enjoyable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just about, a lot of companies just see returns as a headache, and it is a headache, right? So we all acknowledge that it's a headache. It's how do we make it more enjoyable for everyone involved in the process. So that's why we worked on this project with Zalando to help them out on this front and essentially speed it up in a sustainable way.
Excellent, excellent. I'm also going to speed up our conversation a little bit. See, we're 38 minutes into it. Two more topics to cover. I think plenty to talk about. Next
Yeah.
up for us it's I think the burden is on mostly on the online retailers here to make sure that those parcels contain less air, because all that air that is being transported could have been a parcel instead, right?
Yeah. So that's a good point, and that's something that actually can be overcome by doing in-store fulfillment. So the way that we run fulfillment from store, let's take Nespresso as an example. The idea is that I'm an end customer, I'm ordering online, but the moment I order online, it's actually being delivered to me from the closest store. So because it's on demand, because it's going to get to me within the next 2 hours, I, as an end customer, am not expecting this to be packaged as if it's coming from a warehouse, but
Yeah.
actually it's just going to be popped in to the normal paper bag that you would receive anyways if you were shopping in store. So that's the great thing about in-store fulfillment, because you're changing even the packaging, because you're just simply putting it into a carrier bag, which is what you would do anyway if you were shopping in store.
Yeah, there's less risk of damaging the parcel when it's on a bike.
Yeah, and because it's just an hour away, right? You know, it's happening right now. It's not going to go through different people's hands from the DC to a carrier to a parcel shop to a depot. You know, there's less touch points. It's going directly from store, from the sales assistant in store to a driver to the drop off.
All right. And do you also charge your clients by volume? Is that a thing? Because I see that happening more and more in the, say, the old school traditional space, logistics space, that carriers are now charging not only by weight, but more and more by volume. So basically charging retailers for shipping air.
No, not so much in our case, because again, as I mentioned, like the majority of our deliveries are done from in store. So this is not a problem that we've
I see. All right.
foreseen and come across a lot.
And of
But
course,
what
it
we,
has to fit the carrier bag, the courier bag.
yeah, but what we do incentivize in our pricing is
So,
aggregation. So grouping as many jobs as possible in one order is definitely what we incentivize in our pricing model. So that you don't use, you know, 3 different drivers to do 3 different jobs. It's one job with 3 different drop-offs.
great, great. Yeah, I think that's also something that the more traditional logistics space should look into, bundling more and instead of
Yeah.
using
So,
multiple shipments.
and there's a great example, I think, for this that I didn't mention earlier, but Ocado is really has changed and from the beginning has been doing this. But when you select your delivery from Ocado, you can actually see the vans that are green, highlighted in green, or the ones that are highlighted in red, making you as an end customer aware that if you select the green one, you're actually contributing to a greener delivery because you're aggregating. Right, so they do this aggregation model whereby they try and fit in as many orders and deliveries in that 1 hour slot so that they reduce, you know, pollution around that. So Ocado, I think, is a great example for that.
Yeah, I think I've included in the presentation. Here we go. I think it's this is what you mean, right?
Perfect. Yes,
The
that's
time
exactly.
windows basically
Yeah,
stating this is when we are around. This is when we have
yeah,
most deliveries in your area. Please choose this time window because
exactly.
you're increasing efficiency here.
Yeah.
Yeah, really
So
great
it's the
example.
retailer that needs to take this positioning, and it's the retailer who needs to make its end customers aware of it.
Yeah, basically filling up those vans more than they are filled right now. Less air and just all around more parcels in a vehicle. And I think those parcels themselves need to be containing less and less air. And I think a lot of online retailers are moving in the right direction, ordering packaging machines like these that basically just create packages on purpose for each order instead of using a set amount of boxes for items. They make sure that each parcel is custom fitted to the products inside. I think that's a really moving in the right direction. Found some older research from Belgium stating that I think yeah, on average 40% of each parcel, at least in 2016, was containing air. So there's still a lot to be won here. But we're on the right track. So it's about less air in the parcels and more parcels in each van. And I think this can also mean that delivery times might get longer, right? So people delay their deliveries to ensure that the delivery van is full instead of opting for a next day delivery all the time. And yeah, luckily for online retailers, consumers are very eager to do so, more eager so than some might expect. I found some stats saying that 85% of consumers would wait longer for delivery if it helped cut congestion. And many of us don't realize as consumers that by picking a very fast delivery option, express delivery option, that it might be more polluting than a standard delivery, especially when you in the US take air delivery into consideration, which is I think by far the worst. But I think the awareness with consumers is on the rise. Do you see this as well in the countries you operate in? Consumers are also demanding this more from retailers?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think it's a like a domino effect. I mean, it's the, the councils are working towards that in different cities. We have, in London in April next year, an ultra low emission zone coming in, and that's, demanded by the mayor of London. So, it's everybody working together on this. It's not, one specific group putting pressure, but it's everyone together that knows and acknowledges that we have to do something, because the way we're doing it right now is just not sustainable in the long run, especially the more online orders grow.
It's a team effort. Finally, we touch on I think also a major contribution on your side to the logistics landscape, basically embracing the greener delivery vehicles. So once those parcels are finally on the road, make sure it's green vehicles doing the delivery and not some diesel vans driving around. So less air, more parcels in the vehicles, and of course make the vehicles as green as possible. We see, I think, all major carriers these days have some sort of green delivery vehicle on the road, especially in urban areas. And I think more and more is pointing into the direction of bike messengers. You also run not just bike messengers, but also different vehicles, right? Like these we see here.
Yeah, so those are our cargo bikes. We have them in France for now. We used to have them in London as well. In London, it was a bit tricky to maintain, because they take up a lot of space. So they ended up driving on the actual, where cars are driving on the streets. So it's only adding in terms of congestion, because they're very slow moving, and it wasn't a great solution for London. It works well for smaller cities like Barcelona and Paris.
Interesting. So it differs even between cities. So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution to e-commerce. Interesting thoughts. Yeah, I found some stuff by McKinsey. They claim that bike messengers, I think, would be the go-to delivery solution for urban areas in, I think, 2025. So they will be the main delivery vehicle in urban areas. Do you see that happening?
Yeah,
Or will it be
definitely.
more vehicles in this style?
No, I think it's hard to say, because there's a trade-off, right? The trade-off is, if we're moving towards a world where end customers want things on demand, then we can't aggregate that many orders. So for the on-demand side, we definitely need bikes. But if we're talking about same day, then in same day we can aggregate a lot. And for that, we will need, small electric vans, essentially. So it really depends on the nature of what's going to really be the more common delivery option. And I think, to be honest, like what we're seeing now is definitely that we're moving more towards same day rather than on demand on a lot of products.
So you just order now and get it delivered in the evening, and not like an
Yeah.
instant, not as if ordering a pizza, but more.
No, there's hardly, like, outside of food, there's hardly that need of instant.
I agree. I agree. Definitely. If we look at your solution in particular, what are some of the key benefits to an online retailer when you compare it to the more traditional
Yeah.
for logistics guys?
Yeah, so obviously, as I mentioned before, so having instant or scheduled deliveries. So, with the standard carrier, you're not in charge, you're not in control as an end customer to choose your delivery slot, which is something that you can do with Stewart. We can obviously group and pick up multiple parcels at once and drop them off along the way, which drives operational efficiency. And obviously having a multimodal fleet, including green. So being able to adapt to what we're delivering in terms of size to the actual transport type needed to carry out that delivery. And then lastly is the real-time tracking, which is also not very common because you usually just get status updates such as higher delivery has been dispatched. And then it's just going to show up or you're going to miss it. So here it's really about seeing where it is real time.
Do you also do notifications like, okay, your delivery driver is here in, I don't know, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Be sure to be at the door.
Absolutely.
Because what I understand from guys doing similar stuff, that's also a major driver of reducing the time needed for the delivery. So the guy can just go in and out and great.
This is in our best interest as well, yeah.
Yeah. And if you look at the different delivery models you offer to, where can you see a rise? Can you see maybe a decline in other models? Or are you covering all these 5 models to a similar extent?
So, I mean, obviously, store to home is going to be a very big one. It's retailers are not all there yet. I mean, a lot of them are looking at RFID, technology in store, in general, softwares that will help them optimize the in-store inventory accuracy, which now is really about, on average, 70%. But to be able to fulfill from store, you get it up to, you know, as close as to 100 as possible, essentially. And then we have a hub to home model, which means that we have little hubs within central urban areas for retailers to either store their best sellers there directly. You know, I'm talking about 10 to 20 pallets, or cross dock from their DC to this central London hub, and then we do the last mile from there. So this is a great opportunity for anyone who has DCs, I don't know, really far away, not just in the UK, but outside of the UK, or is a pure play e-com player. Okay. And then, I mean, instant returns, this is about selling inbound and outbound strategy together. You know, it would be sad to just have an outbound strategy without having an inbound as well, because we have to face that returns are just part of e-commerce and the way the landscape is built right now. And then store to store is just stock shifting. I mean, that's not a big use case, but to still, instead of, you know, missing out on the sale, if I'm an end customer walking in a Zara and there's, you know, size M missing that I wanted, but it's available at another store, why order it directly online if I can just bring it to you from another store? So that's stock shifting. And then concierge, that's something that we launched with Nike, is being able to do home deliveries from in-store purchases. So if I'm at Nike Town London, for instance, and I'm buying, you know, a bunch of items and I qualify based on my basket size being over 100 pounds, then I qualify for free home delivery. And the reason for that is that a lot of times you don't want to be walking home or ordering a car, right, to get home with all your shopping. So we're saying, don't worry, we can get it home for you.
I can also imagine it's a big thing for tourists that are on a trip to London. They don't want to carry around their stuff all day.
Yeah, get it sent to you. Yeah, that's a big one.
Excellent. I think it's a nice varied offering you. But as you said, the store to home, that will be the big one.
Yeah.
All right. I think we touched on an espresso use case. Do you think we need to delve into this a little bit deeper? Is it?
No, I think it's. I mean, I covered all of it. I suggest anyone who wants to have a look at it really to go on Nespresso Fast and Green online and have a look at the landing page.
This is the store to home. The big one. All right. Of course, we looked into your cities you currently operate in. I think I just had one final question before we wrap up. I found this map with the population density across Europe. What are, for you, looking into new cities or the cities you operate in, what are the criteria for you to run a sustainable business as a Stewart? In terms of population density, sorry.
So, I mean, all of what we do is not necessarily based on population density, because our model is driven by density per se. So we assume that where we go would have a high level of density in terms of population. So, you know, you're never going to find us in a very rural city of the UK or any other country for that matter. But what we do need to look at is being very client driven in our expansion. So obviously, the moment that an espresso launches a fast and green service, they want to be able to scale it and offer it to as many end customers as possible. So we need to be able to, essentially grow out with them based on where their biggest impact is in terms of end customers, and be able to open up those areas for them. So it's very client driven.
All right, all right. So it's more. There's more sides to it than just population density.
100%.
Right, 100%. All right, all right. And with this, these are some of the cities you are. Those are to come. Do you also have, as Stuart, plans to expand into either US, Asia, Africa, South America, or is it just Europe for you guys now?
So it's mainly just Europe, and this is because, we have Geopost backing, and Geopost is a very strong European presence. So it's definitely going to be the focus for now on Europe.
All right. Well, exciting times. I think there's still plenty left to conquer, right? Plenty of cities
Yeah,
to
100%.
get. You call them stewies, right? I didn't
Yeah,
know, but
Stewies. Yeah,
get some stewies on the road. All right.
yeah.
All right. I think we're a little bit running out of time, so I think it's definitely a good moment to wrap up our conversation. I enjoyed it very much. I hope you did as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks for joining us. Some takeaways for those who, yeah, I think just some 5 major takeaways. Is that bottom line is that online, at least in theory, is more sustainable than offline, but if done right, and if done right we mean no missed deliveries, no unnecessary returns. Go for green speed, and if you can't offer green speed, slow down the delivery to fill up those delivery vans. And I think finally we can pretty much conclude that bikes might be the urban delivery vehicles of the future. So there's a real, well, a bright future for bikes ahead, right?
100%. Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
that's what we believe.
All right, Joe, you should come to Amsterdam, but I think it's already on
Yeah,
the map for you guys, right? It's
yeah,
like
it is. It is. It's
one
definitely
of
a
the
project. Yeah.
needs to happen because it's like the one of the biking capitals of the world. So
I know.
you
No,
guys
no,
should fit right
management
in.
everywhere.
Any timeline on that, or is it just your Amsterdam
Definitely
arrival?
in 2019. 2019 for sure.
Okay, we'll be on the lookout, and of course we'll be in touch to make sure that our clients can also offer Stewart in the near future. I think we've come to the end of our conversation. If there's any questions from the audience, now is the moment. Normally we see some questions popping in already during our conversation, but I haven't seen those yet. So that can only mean we've had a very clear story, I guess. No questions from you guys?
If anyone thinks of any questions later on, Alvar, you can share my email.
Yeah, I'll also put it on the screen
Perfect.
one more time. If you guys have any questions about either Paazl or Stewart, feel free to drop us a line. We're also happy to share our presentation with you, so you can I don't know, give it to somebody else or whatever you like to do with it. We've recorded our entire conversation as well, so if you look back, we will be sharing the video link with all of you, so you can rewatch the presentation. As I see, there's no further questions from the audience. I think we can wrap up. Again, thanks very much, Nicole, for joining us. Thanks everybody in the audience, and at least I will hope to see everybody next time. And I'll be closing the webinar. So thanks very much.
Thanks,
Bye
Alvar.
bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.